She's to sick bay. The doctor should look at it as soon as possible.
It is the way in which we propagate our species.
Please demonstrate how this is accomplished.
So, what's next?
I don't know.
Hi, and welcome to Casual Trek, a Star Trek recap and ranking podcast. I'm Charlie Etheridge-Nunn, a writer and a Marvel's The Slingers fan.
Hi, I'm Miles Reid-Lobatto. I am a writer, I am a stand-up comedian, and I am a Unbeatable Squirrel Girl fan.
Nice. Yeah, yours is far better, actually, with that. I like The Slingers, but still. Anyway, each episode we'll watch stories from 3 different Star Trek shows and we'll rank them on a big list from best to worst. We both love Star Trek, but as it's far from our first fandom, it is no Slingers after all. This does make us the objective voices on such a task. Now, previously we've looked at antagonists to our merry crews, people like the Klingons and the people from mirror universes. Now we've got a new and horrendous foe that our cast faces. Tribbles.
Tribbles? What are Tribbles?
Ooh, Tribbles are... they're kind of like a ball of fluff that's mostly reproductive organs. We'll get into the body horror at some point soon. Miles, have you lived with any kind of horrific pets?
Well, my cat Willie is sitting on the bed and he's kind of looking at me, so I am going to keep quiet for the safety of my knees.
Okay. I grew up with a psychotic ex-lab rabbit. She was called Mrs. Rabbit because my parents didn't want to keep her, and they didn't want to give her a name that would get us, invested in
An emotional bond.
Exactly, yeah. One of my dad's friends broke out a bunch of lab animals, and the only one he couldn't get rid of was this insane half hare kind of thing, which was Mrs. Rabbit. And he tried giving it to my dad, and my dad, being a smartass, which runs in the family, was like, "Oh, we're going away on a holiday for the next fortnight. So I'll say, if in the next week she's here, she has a hutch, she has food," knowing that no one would be in to let him in. So the guy broke in, and we came back and found a handmade wooden hutch and this monster of a rabbit that if she wasn't with us, she'd be felling cars.
Oh, no.
She had a little bunny gulag, and we had to fill the underneath of it with bricks because she'd burrow through it and attack the dog otherwise. Where she was in her little kind of bunny camp, I would go and feed her, and she would attack my boots. And I was the one with the thickest shoes, so she couldn't get all the way through in time. So yeah, that's my relationship with horrifying little furry objects.
Thinking about it, my mum had a cat called Sooty, and I swear if it used to sit on the radiator, and if I leaned back too much, Sooty would try and claw my skull open to get at the brainy goodness.
Lovely. One of my old role-playing group, Darren, had a cat like that who'd wait on half-open doors, on the top. So when you open the door, she'd drop on you and just start scratching.
Nice.
A monster. Anyway, before we get on to just pet horror, Miles, what non-Star Trek thing have you been enjoying since we last spoke?
Ooh, what non-Star Trek thing? Well, I am currently reading the 250-page novella by one Alan Moore, What We Can Learn About Thunderman, which is from his recently released collection of short stories, Illuminations.
I'm sure it's going to be a glowing, happy recollection of times about comics.
Are you familiar with the grotesque art style of Kevin O'Neill?
Yes, I am.
This is the first time I've ever read a piece of prose, and I can imagine it being drawn by Kevin O'Neill.
So
it just...
For the audience at home, given this is an audio medium, and not everyone will know who Kevin O'Neill is, could you elucidate for the crowd what exactly that would feel like to the ears?
incredibly scratchy and grotesque. Like the way he draws, the way he draws people, they're very sort of gangly and long-limbed, and there is just this kind of uncanny there's kind of uncanny valley kind of editorial cartoon quality to his art style. Like there was a sequence where a collection of characters have to literally swim through a living room full of so much pornography it comes up to their waists.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So fun times.
Fun times. The thing is, Alan Moore is a fantastic prose writer. It's just that moment any kind of time he ever talks about superheroes nowadays, you can just see the bitterness just overcome him, and it kind of becomes overwhelming.
Yes, I feel we are long past the point where anyone should ask Alan Moore any opinions about superheroes.
Please, for the love of God, just don't. So, what have you been enjoying which is non-Trek related?
So, I had a little bit of time off for my partner's birth. In amongst other things, we saw a couple of films. We saw Don't Worry, Darling, which was all right, but could not stick the landing ultimately. This isn't that as the non-Star Trek thing that I've been enjoying. Instead, we saw Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook, and it was a really fun, really interesting, just a really good film. And I admit, I'm so numbed and deadened to troubled police officers. You know, it's such a dull subject, and I'm growing increasingly cranky about the dominance of crime as a genre when it is all that sort of thing. But with Decision to Leave, you've got a police officer who's trying to investigate the death of this guy, and it looks an awful lot like his wife may have been the death of him in what could have been a mountaineering accident. And watching the kind of the suspiciousness, the want of not finding her guilty, the kind of all of these moments inside it of all of the characters, even the minor characters, are fleshed out, but in that kind of just your stressed person having to do paperwork, having to work in really crappy offices, and all of these kind of things, and the feeling of the world is really good. The tension of it all, and it's a rare film where it hit the end of Act 2, and it felt like I was at the end of the film, and then there was another act.
Oh,
I was like, oh no, is this going to feel like it's wasting my time? Is it just going to take too long getting to where it needs to get? But it was good. It was a good third act that felt like it didn't need to necessarily. I mean, it did need to be there, but it's far too often in modern American films, at least, you probably can cut one thing out of your movie. You can cut at least half hour. And this one took its time, and it played in the emotional spaces of the cast and all of that. And it's one of those things where, because I second screen way too much, I don't watch as much foreign cinema as I really should. And it was just really refreshing and really nicely shot.
Might have to check that out.
Definitely. It was one of those ones where it was on at a picture house, and only for a very small amount of time. So we were lucky to be able to dive in. Otherwise, just been, Black Adam, basically. And I can't be asked. Yeah, like Jeff Johns has made me very disinterested, and I get the feeling that the balance of power in DC cinematic things hasn't really shifted that much as The Rock would have liked to think. But anyway, we're not here to talk about The Rock's The Black Adam film. We're here to talk about Star Trek, and specifically Tribbles.
And the trouble they're in.
Yeah. I have seen one of these episodes before doing kind of the watch through for these, and they were all good fun, but there was definitely a theme of utter weird body horror as far as the Tribbles go.
The animated series episode is one of the ones I grew up on because I did grow up, like, that was, like, my most consumed Trek. And then after that, it's going to be the DS9 coming in second place for, like, most watched. And then I think I may have seen the original episode maybe just once or twice.
Okay, cool. So yeah, without further ado, our first episode is the originator of all of this. It is Star Trek The Original Series, Season 2, Episode 13, titled The Trouble with Tribbles. This episode aired on the 29th of December 1967. It was written by David Gerrold, directed by Joseph Pevney, and I believe you are aware of David's work.
Yeah, he's also a SF novelist. One of the main themes of the Tribble stories, which is an occult, like a predator or a creature being introduced into an ecology that's not designed for it. He plays on further in a series of novels called The War Against the Ch'Tor, which might be the series of books where people have been waiting for the next part longer than all the people complaining about George R. Martin and The Wind of Winter.
Oh, wow.
I think the fourth book came out at some point in the 90s, and the fifth book is still being worked on.
Huh.
Since the books have a propensity for sending its main character into moments of insanity, I can understand why, plus life is pretty complex. The War Against the Ch'Tor books deals with in a world which has been devastated by a virulent pandemic. Don't see why that sounds familiar.
No.
And then this comet hits the Earth, which brings across a whole new ecology from alien planet, and including the Ch'Tor, which are a species of giant worms. And I mean, they're not dune-sized giant, but they're pretty big, and they will eat anything. And of course, Earth is completely unprepared for this creature, so the Ch'Toran ecology is slowly spreading and overwhelming the Earth ecology. There's also a trilogy of books called The Star Wolf, which seem to be how David Gerrold would write Star Trek if he had his way. They feel much more like space travel feels more like submarine travel, and I feel some of the notes that he brought in he worked on the original series, the first season of Star Trek Next Generation. In fact, it was his idea to bring in a Klingon officer to show how things have changed. But unfortunately, due to behind-the-scenes chaos, and he kept trying to have a script produced called Blood and Fire, which would deal with a allegory to the AIDS crisis at the time, and he specifically wanted to show a non-heteronormative couple in Starfleet on the Enterprise as like a throwaway thing.
Yeah.
And that got him into trouble with Gene Roddenberry, and he was forced to unfortunately leave the production offices of Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh dear. It's interesting seeing the amount of times that people were trying to do things like that in the various Star Treks. It's like with Ubisoft and a lot of the behind the scenes people wanting to make a female protagonist and then constantly being told, we don't understand how their bones work, you have to have a gruff guy with some stubble and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this guy, he's got previous with this sort of thing, or at least will go on from this.
He will go on from this. He wrote the first one at the age of 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, interesting. And he'll be back again for the animated episode later on.
Yep.
Okay, so the UK and US #1 hits are a classic Sega versus Nintendo kind of fight to the death between the Beatles and the Monkees. Over here we have the Beatles with Hello Goodbye, and over there there's the Monkees with Daydream Believer.
I am not familiar with Hello Goodbye as much as I should be, but I do love me some Monkees.
See, for me it's very much the other way around. I know the Monkees a little, but I was raised on the Beatles a lot, so yeah, Hello Goodbye is definitely a close one in my heart. Even though I went through those 20s and early 30s of going, oh, Beatles, they're overrated. It's like, yeah, because they were good. It's fine.
My parents are very much Stones fans, so my preferring the Beatles is very much my childish rebellion. And when it comes to, like, Beatles versus Stones, I always end up saying that the Beatles did more to kind of push what you could do with contemporary pop music as a form in, like, the space of a decade than the Stones did in their entire, like, length of time as a band.
Yeah. Right. So, on to the recap. And have you got the timer ready?
I do. I'm just getting it going now. And engage.
So, trouble with tribbles. We got some trouble on the borderlands to start off with. Specifically, Space Station K7, a mere 1 parsec from Klingon turf. There's a distress call from the station, and one of those we're nearly at disaster kind of alerts from them. But when the Enterprise arrives, nothing seems out of place. There aren't any Klingon ships. They call in, and a Mr. Lurry seems a little awkward about the whole alarm thing. Lurry and his assistant, one Nils Barrett, are there, and Nils put the call in for Federation, getting a bit paranoid about a big shipment of quadritriticale grain, basically.
Grain. Space grain.
Yeah, space grain, which needs Federation guards given the proximity to Klingons, even though there aren't any currently here. It's needed on a place called Sherman's Planet for the Federation to help make it habitable, and more specifically, theirs. Kirk takes a piss out of the whole thing. He's no one's bodyguard, not if they're messing around with the alarm system when they shouldn't be, and should have put a call into Federation headquarters itself. But fine, they're here. They'll send like 2 guards for the grain. Everyone else gets a nice bit of shore leave. At a local bar, Uhura and Chekhov watch a dodgy merchant called Serrano Jones try to sell a long-suffering barkeeping animal called a Tribble. It's a kind of chirping ball of fluff made with extremely varying quality all through this episode. Uhura shows particular interest with it, and seeing how popular it's going to be, the bartender's like, okay, fine, I will take some of your tribbles. And Serrano accepts the offer, but gives a tribble over to Uhura anyway, depriving the bartender of the one guaranteed customer he was likely to have. Kirk gets called by Starfleet and told off because, Nils has been squealing, basically, about the whole not taking the guarding seriously, and he won't. At least, not until the Klingons arrive, as this is a border place. So, Captain Koloff of the Klingons is very much on the we are just here for shore leave as well. The lads need a place to rest, have a few drinks, head back out again. Mr. Lurry is fine with this, but obviously there are concerns that they are going to muck about with the grain and with the people in general. Kirk now decides, fine, I'm going to start assigning more security just in case. He also assigns Scotty to chill the hell out because he has not. He's been making his technical manuals as his only way of calming down from just space life, and gets sent off to the pub. And while he does that, everyone else around him seems kind of enamored with the tribbles. The noises they make seem calming for people, weirdly so. Bones gets a bunch for tribbles. He discovers that they're mostly just a hairy reproductive organ that asexually reproduces, but I think he calls it bisexually reproducing.
He does. It was kind of like, that's not what bisexuality means.
And also, terrifyingly, the tribbles are born pregnant. Still, we put a pin in that for now, and Scotty's at the bar. Some Klingons rock up and start saying all kinds of shit about Kirk. This he's fine with. He gets Chekhov to calm down. It's all right, don't need to start anything. Until they start insulting the Enterprise itself. Now it's time to start a fight. We're talking proper 1960s fight, tumbling everywhere, that kind of double-handed punch kind of thing. It's great fun. Everyone gets in on it, apart from Serrano Jones, who just kind of grabs a drink and swans off, which is the smart thing to do in this situation. The crew get a dressing down from Kirk, and it's a shame the cowards who remastered this episode didn't add a Bashir and O'Brien into this scene, but more on that later. Uhura is now doing a side hustle of peddling tribbles all over the Enterprise, and Kirk wants them gone. They are literally everywhere at this point. Mr. Lurry is also haranguing Kirk, saying that Serrano could be an evil Klingon agent with how much K7 and Enterprise are both covered in tribbles. And Serrano's too incompetent to be an agent. He's just a bit crap. The Enterprise at this point is now mostly tribbles. Kirk's...
No.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Oh, I thought I was doing well, but apparently not.
No.
It was all of the acting out of the punching and the tumbling, which no one could see, but I had to do.
In a different world, Uhura is now part of a Tribble MLM.
Definitely, yes. If they weren't post scarcity, she would be 100% on the MLM shit.
Right. Okay. Well, let's put it this way: peddling tribbles is better than peddling NFTs.
This is true. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And go.
Yeah. So, as I said, the Enterprise mostly tribbles now. In the engines, tribbles. Kirk's lunch, also tribbles. His coffee, tribbles. That's it. You mess with a man's coffee. We've had enough now. It's time to get serious. Kirk heads down to the grain storage, and guess what? It is also tribbles. Oh no, that's Sherman's world fucked again now. They all rain down on Kirk, burying in tribbles, and Nils is there. He's upset about all of this. He's going to blame Kirk, and after he storms out, we find out that all the tribbles that Kirk's buried in are dead. Like, almost all of them are dead. He's in a big pile of furry little tribble corpses, which is grim. Really grim. Serrano, Koloth, and Nils and Laurie are all summoned for a denouement, which I always love. Always got to have a denouement. It's pointed out during this scene that tribbles love everyone. It's why they chirp all of the time. You know, look at this. Pokes tribble at person. Oh yeah, they're nice. They chirp. They don't like Klingons, however. And we know this because of all the Klingons mucking around on K7 already. But when they sling a tribble at Nils, he freaks out and is revealed to be an evil Klingon agent with the un-Klingon-y name of Arn Darvin. That grain, turns out, it was poisoned by Arn Darvin, and this is why the tribbles died. They've acted quite nicely as canaries in this instance, because if that got down on Sherman's planet, that would be really bad. Luckily, it's all been eaten. The Klingons are told to get off out of here. Serrano is given the task of cleaning up all the tribbles, which should take 17.9 years in total, according to Spark. The Enterprise leaves and is going to have to go and get some non-poisoned grain for Sherman's planet. And that tribble problem the Enterprise had, Scott has got a solution. He's gathered them all together, beamed them over to Koloth's ship as a parting present. We all have a big laugh, and that's it. The end.
Cool. Credits. All right. That was 2 minutes and 35 seconds.
Okay. So, yeah, that I've seen that bit with the tribbles all falling on Kirk, but it took until watching this episode to realize they're all dead. That's a rough one.
Furry little tribble corpses sounds like, it should be the title like a post-punk band.
Yeah, like one in the world of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Some like edgy kid that's heard about this whole incident. Maybe he was on K7 or something. It's like, yeah, that sounds hardcore. Not realizing that it takes very little effort to kill a tribble.
Furry little tribble corpses opening for Slayer.
Nice. So yeah, this was a fun one.
This is a romp. This is a good Star Trek comedy episode because the trouble with like my distaste of Star Trek comedy episodes kind of I think comes from having seen like TNG and DS9 try and do comedy, and definitely more TNG, where how they make comedy work for a show which does take itself a bit too seriously is to essentially have our characters act like idiots this week.
Yeah.
And because the stakes are relatively low, like because there's no huge like galaxy saving mission, the crew are allowed to the crew are basically on short leave, so they're allowed to kind of fart around with Kirk acting as the straight man.
At first, I had some issues with how utterly flippant Kirk was about all of this, but then just kind of lent into it. You know, as you say, some of the more TNG, DS9, Voyager kind of era of comedy episodes, they go big with a lot of it. And, you know, as the OC said, big isn't funny. Like,
no.
You know, it can be all right if it's with other things, but on its own, not great. This, loved it. Kirk and Spock just going from situation to situation, getting increasingly stressed with it all. Your lads having a bar fight at the space station. Like, you don't see as much, or at least so far, I've not seen as much kind of shore leave and the crew chilling out. They've all been business.
The one thing that kind of took me by surprise, since I've not seen much of the show when Chekhov is like a central character.
Yeah.
So I only really know Chekhov from like the films. So it's kind of weird seeing him like in this, where he seems to be very much like the kid of the show. He's like the Wesley Crusher of TOS. He is. Yeah. Then I realized like each show kind of has a kid character, with Voyager's kind of being Kez or Harry.
They get a child later on, don't they?
I think so. I think there's a child.
But yeah, Chekhov, this is the first time I've seen his shtick, and I knew this was a thing, but I don't know if I've ever seen it as a thing where he credits everything as being Russian ingenuity. Where it's like this, that, also Russian, and then also instantly kind of disproved or kind of smacked down for that.
See, it's kind of weird because I'm watching him do that, and I keep thinking of every time Putin opens his mouth at a speech to kind of claim that that's Russian, that's Russian, that's Russian. This is topical. But yeah, I love the reference to Old Britain.
Oh, God. I mean, is that going to be Britain RIP kind of thing?
I don't know. It might just be that's Old Britain, and then you have like Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, who are now their own thriving independent communities.
What, Neo-Britain?
No, New Scotland.
Oh, God, of course, yes. Dear, oh dear. So yeah, this was a fun one. I've got few actual flaws to say about it. Obviously, it's a nonsense episode. You know, you got the Tribbles. If I remember correctly, Shatner wasn't thrilled about doing a wacky episode and being the butt of jokes, only to have a sequel to this later in the cartoon as well.
See, I think it kind of works because everyone else knows they're in a sitcom. Especially like Cyrano Jones and the bartender, who might get like the best comedy moments of the show when the bartender is just pulling out Tribbles from behind the bar and just putting them in front of Cyrano Jones, where we have like the wacky music playing. But yeah, Kirk is I love seeing Grumpy Kirk, because generally when Shatner does comedy, and Shatner can like do comedy, like if you've seen, say, Voyage Home or when he was in Third Rock from the Sun, the guy can do comedy, but I think he works best as being like the grumpy straight man to the comedy around him.
He's definitely grown into that role, the older and grumpier he's got.
Yeah. When the Klingon starts insulting the Enterprise, we have the close-up of Scotty. Did you imagine the Kill Bill music playing?
Oh, hell yeah. Not when he was insulting Kirk. That was all still...
No.
Sometimes comedy music, but the second But he
Yep.
started insulting the Enterprise. Oh no!
Oh,
Oh no!
no.
You've opened the Hurt Locker now.
Oh, I loved it when he's telling Kirk about this, and Kirk is just very clearly upset that Scotty's just like, yeah, sure, insult the captain, but don't insult my ship.
Yeah, he didn't have to dig. Like, didn't have to keep going with mentioning it. He all but said to Kirk, I'm completely fine with them insulting literally everything about you. Your lineage, your attitude, everything. But if they mention one thing of the ship being out of order, that's it. Now it's time for...
It's on.
Yeah. We have a big list of every Star Trek episode so far from this podcast. Not every episode for the whole thing. That's a long time away from happening. But we have 21 entries on our big list, starting with at number 1, still unmoved from when it was first here, Deep Space Nine's pilot, Emissary. And down at the bottom, in place number 21, the lowest that it can be, we have Enterprise's pilot, Broken Bow. And in between, we have some very varied things between spooky cats, Odo exploding, all kinds of things. Now, where on this big list of best to worst does the Trouble with Tribbles go? Like, is it better than the other original series episodes? Is it better than Mirror Mirror, which is our best original series?
Ooh, I think it's definitely better than The Cage.
Mm-hmm. As well as quality, like, this is a good quality episode. Like, what's its legacy? Its legacy is literally the only other 2 episodes that are covered today and nothing else.
I don't know. I think its legacy is the image of William Shatner buried in Tribbles with the expression clearly, fuck my life.
Yes, this is true. So, are you saying it's worse than Mirror Mirror, better than The Cage in that respect?
I don't know if it's...
Mirror Mirror's good, but I think I might prefer this one.
No, I think I might have... This is definitely the episode of TOS that we've watched for this show that I had the most fun watching.
Yes.
The jokes land, the physical comedy is great, the bar fight is fun, the music is doing overtime with like the sad theremin for when Kirk is buried in Tribbles. It all hangs together.
This was a joy. So you saying this is better even than Mirror Mirror?
I am.
Okay, in which case that is our number 4. Wow, I expected this to be very much cult for new kind of thing with some of these episodes, but we've got some old darlings at the top. That is definitely interesting to see.
There we go.
So, next up we have Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and this is the only one I'd seen from this set of episodes. So it was fascinating seeing The Trouble with Tribbles, and now we're going to revisit that exact same story from a different angle with Deep Space Nine.
The Back to the Future 2 to The Trouble with Tribbles Back to the Future, if you will.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, this is Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribble-Ations.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. It aired on the 4th of November, 1996. There are quite a few credits for this one. Teleplay by Ron Moore and Renee Echevarria. Story by Ira Stephen Bear, Hans Baimler, and Robert Hewitt Wolfe. And directed by Jonathan West. The UK and US number 1 hits at the time. The UK hit was the Spice Girls with Say You'll Be There. And the US had Los Del Rio with the Macarena Bayside Boys mix.
Oh, God.
See, for me, that grounds it exactly at a point in time. Oh, dear Lord. That's, yeah. Ugh. Anyway, on that chilling note, at least from my memories, and hopefully most of you will be going, "What? What is any of this?" Because you're young and I'm ancient. Next up, we have the recap. So, Miles, are you ready?
I am ready.
Engage.
We open on DS9 as a ship from the Federation's Department of Temporal Investigations turns up with their two agents, Dulmer and Luxley, which are actually anagrams of Mulder and Scully from the X-Files. It turns out that the Federation, that Starfleet, has a bureaucratic department dedicated to Starfleet officers going back in time and basically pissing temporal causality down their leg. It turns out that the Defiant, which is DS9's little ship that they have at this point, went back in time. It turns out that the Cardassians discovered a lost orb of the Prophets, and the Defiant went to go get it. Bringing aboard the orb and a man called Barry Waddle or something.
Barry Wattle.
Who was Barry Waddle. Barry Waddle.
Yep.
As they're heading back, and they end up going back in time. Turns out the orb they had is actually a time orb, the Prophet Orb of Time, and they've been taken back to Space Station K7, and they literally see the Enterprise. Doing some quick detective work, they find out that Waddle is actually our old mate Arn Darwin, who has gone back in time to probably kill Kirk. So they hit upon a plan. Dax, Bashir, O'Brien, and Cisco will disguise themselves in Federation garb of the time, which means a few color switches and Dax showing off more leg than usual. Bashir pointing us out in the way that Bashir normally does. Meanwhile, Odo and Worf will put on their best bandanas and go over to Space Station K7 to do some investigating. On the Enterprise, it goes pretty well. Bashir meets someone he thinks might be his grandmother and great-grandmother, and immediately tries to consider banging her. Meanwhile, Cisco and Dax are traveling around the Enterprise, and Dax is having a field day because technically the symbiote was alive back then. And so she's kind of taken over all the nostalgia of it all. Meanwhile, Odo and Worf's detective work have begun and ended at the bar, where Odo has bought a Tribble off Cyrano Jones. That bartender's never going to get his money back on his investment, and it is great to see Odo stroking and loving a Tribble. Worf is not happy to see the Tribble. Turns out that the Tribbles are one of the great enemies of the Empire, and were hunted down to extinction by the Klingon Empire. Put a pin in it.
Mm-hmm.
As the search goes on, the Klingons arrive, led by Kurloff, who's actually an old mate of Dax's, and the Klingons start boarding the station to begin shore leave, much to O'Brien, Odo, and Bashir's surprise when they find out that Klingons like to wear blackface. Worf's reasoning, we don't talk about it.
Fair.
Meanwhile, the bar fight starts, and Odo who is noping out to the bar fight, sees Darwin. Moment he sees Darwin, immediately, pow! Double fist punch, and runs off to catch him. It turns out that Darwin has actually hidden a bomb inside a Tribble. Bashir and O'Brien, on the other hand, are arrested, and O'Brien gets to lie to Captain Kirk, which, makes his day. Now that they've narrowed down the quest to finding the Tribble with the bomb in, Dax and Cisco head up to the bridge while everyone else investigates the space station. It turns out that the bomb might actually be hidden in somewhere where Darwin knows Kirk will be. So Dax and Cisco head down to the storage grain to find the Tribbles as they're pouring down on Captain Kirk. And at that point, they're just scanning Tribbles, and they're just yeeting the Tribbles at Captain Kirk. They find the Tribble with the bomb, and they beam it into space. Kaboom! By Tribble. Meanwhile, Kira, who's not done much this episode because she is visibly pregnant, put a pin in that for chronological viewing.
Oh,
and
hang on.
So close.
You were
close.
Loading Tribble. You were so close. Okay, home stretch. Go.
And having found a way to go back to the future, they do so, but not before Cisco takes the opportunity to go to Kirk and go, it was an honor serving with you. Using footage from an episode we've seen already, Mirror Mirror, where Sisko has been superimposed using Forrest Gump technology over the ensign who turned out to be Kirk's lover in the mirror universe. This leads to some fascination awkwardness, where in the original episode, Uhura was surprised at the female ensign. Now, if you look at her in the background, she is clearly checking Sisko out. There was some subtle first in this episode where Dax has been revealed to have once gotten on with McCoy, and she wants to get it on with Spock. Sisko is in the back to the present, and Sisko's like, yeah, I manipulated time so I could shake Kirk's hand, and one of the DTI agents goes, you know what? I would have done the same in this situation, even though we hate Kirk in this department because he has 17 separate temporal violations. They go, sure, everything's fine. We're heading off, and they clearly get escorted without going by the promenade, because it turns out that Odo's pet Tribble did what Tribble's done, and now the space station and Quark are covered in Tribbles.
Oh, God. Yep. Yeah, comedy ending. Okay, 1 minute, 50 seconds over there. And there were some good deviations there, admittedly. Yeah, I was in hysterics when Dax was saying about hooking up with Bones.
I have 2 questions for you. One you have been prepped for, and one you have not. Question that you have not been prepped for.
Oh, yeah.
Who would you meet from the past and shake their hand and tell them how much you think they're awesome?
My past or Star Trek past?
Just in the past. Like, if there's a historical figure who you would like to meet and shake their hand, who would it be?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I'm very much of the kind of, I don't know, a lot of past figures were generally jerks or weirdos or anything like that. So like Leonardo da Vinci would be fun. Tell him finish a project for once, Leo. As like so many of us creatives, he was a relentless procrastinator, and I admire that energy. Being a horrendous X-Men fanboy, I'd like to say that to Chris Claremont before he became Chris Claremont from like 1999 onwards. Yeah.
I think I would like to meet Harlan Ellison, even though I know it would end with me being insulted by Harlan Ellison, as Harlan Ellison was wont to do.
Yeah, you'd be down for that.
I'd be down for that. Second question, which you were prepared for. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Jadzia Dax could have pulled Spock?
Obviously. Not only is Dax stunning in original series cosplay, but Jadzia Dax is like someone worldly enough after all of those different hosts and all that. She's obviously been able to hang out with Klingons and ends up marrying one, ill-advised really with Worf, but fine. Yeah, I reckon she'd be fine and easy enough to take on the challenge of pulling a Vulcan. And we know from Strange New Worlds that Spock does fuck.
Oh yeah, Spock does fuck. But yeah,
her fangirling over him was brilliant, and it was very on the nose, kind of her going, "Whoa, that's a bit of all right," and Sisko going, "I agree, Kirk is mighty fine," and she was like, "No, no, my friend, for one with the ears."
And I love how Sisko reacts like, "And we're going."
Yeah, well, there are a couple of times where she's utterly and understandably fanning out about being back in time to the time where she was younger and going, "Oh, this is great! Look at all the bright corridors, all of the tech." And Sisko's like, "No, we're keeping it together. We've got our serious faces on. We've got a mission." Only for him to actually get a bit of fanning out the way by having that last little moment with Kirk. I was very proud of him for letting himself do that after being Mr. Serious.
Sisko is definitely like in the role of straight man as Kirk is in the original story, where everyone else, the comedy stuff works, and I definitely feel that DS9 doing comedy, because I would say that most of the very kind of direct comedy essentially comes from O'Brien and Bashir, basically being those two British mates in space.
Yeah. Yeah, and weirdly enough, they were lower down on they were still there on the comedy stakes. And of course, Kira, as you said, was right down at the lowest just because she didn't have anything to do. But
Yeah.
Odo and Worf were great fun. And it was overall a very, very entertaining episode.
I love seeing Odo smile.
Yes.
Because his face, with the makeup, his face just lights up.
It's enough one of those things, like, you can see Doug Jones's expressiveness in Discovery being used to its maximum potential. And with Odo, makeup and his own seriousness wasn't quite at that level. So it's a nice rarity when it happens. And I'm not the biggest Odo fan, but it is still good to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was good fun. I am sad that Bashir did not become a causality loop. I assume that was cut for time. Any conclusion or continuation of that story arc, because if anyone would do that, it would be him.
See, I kept thinking about the one episode of Futurama where Fry accidentally becomes his own grandfather, and where he's trying not to do that. Whereas Bashir is disturbingly, you can tell that he's posh and British enough to be down with incest.
I was in the hysterics seeing that, going, when you go, oh my god, oh no, I was flirted with by my great grandmother, rather than going, oh, that's weird, best try not to do that. But she was like, yep, and I'm gonna play into it. Like, what if not banging my great grandmother stops me from existing? Checkmate there.
O'Brien checkmates the checkmate by just going, that'd be hilarious.
Again, those two guys, those two British guys,
those two British guys in space. Like, yeah.
Bet you can't pull your great grandma.
I love the part when they arrive in the bar and they immediately start making fun of Odo and Worf, just implying that they've just been hanging around the bar all day and they've been doing all the actual work. I love seeing these characters feel like people.
Yes.
And of course, like, the Klingon gag.
I know Ron Moore, I think it was Ron Moore, was in that kind of, well, we could explain it, but we best not.
It's funnier not to. Like, it's just like, yeah, Klingons look like that. We don't like to talk about it.
Which, I guess, it's better than the other solution, which would be when they're back in time, as well as using slightly different cameras and slightly different kind of sets and everything, make Worf up like that. Which I guess would have been the other solution. Not a great one.
I don't know, that'd been kind of funny. That's kind of like the Axe Cop lore of DNA works like this. It's Star Trek.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, like the integration of the different eras of footage using the technology they pioneered for Forrest Gump being cheap enough that they could do it on a Star Trek budget was great. Like, when they step out onto the reconstructions of the old sets, I admit I was kind of grinning, despite the fact that this is a TV set of a show I watched the night before.
Yes, yeah, it was fascinating watching these back to back and seeing the moments where, you can see where the people have been kind of overlaid over them. And of course, there is the complete lack of believability of Dax wandering around the bridge, checking tribbles for bombs, while not being objectified by Kirk. You can tell that they're not there in the same place. But yeah, it was a great fun thing. I think the Cyrano Jones sauntering out of the bar was the only bit I found jarring when I first saw this and had no clue
who he was.
Yeah, that was one of the only moments where it was hindered by not having seen Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
But it was so short, it didn't matter. Like, it was
going
1960s double fist punch tumbling kind of stuff, which I'm pleased the lads from DS9 also got in with the exact same style.
Oh, I love that moment when it basically kind of goes Jets v Sharks and everyone just kind of stands up. Like, Bashir and O'Brien just stand up. Okay, again, they're English. They're down for a barroom brawl. Worf's just like, all right, we're doing this. And Odo's like, what are you guys doing? No.
You can tell he's not been with the Federation people as long.
No, he is not the guy. He's not the guy who starts barroom brawls. He's the guy who breaks up the barroom brawls.
Yeah, and I guess you need one of those.
This isn't the greatest sci-fi barroom brawl of all time, no. That, of course, is always going to be the barroom tidy from the Red Dwarf episode backwards.
Oh god, of course. Yes, I forgot about that. I thought you were going to mention some obscure Blake 7 barroom brawl.
There are disappointingly few barroom brawls in Blake 7. It's one of the few strikes against it.
I was going to say, what? An otherwise perfect television show, apparently.
Like, hang on, I'm trying to think. No, I don't think even Doctor Who has had a barroom brawl.
Oh, now that is shameful.
Now, we've had John Pertwee stunt double yeet around a few extras in the 70s, but that's pretty much it. Okay, a little bit of trivia.
Go on.
The guy O'Brien keeps mistaking for Kirk
Yeah.
is actually William Shatner's stunt double.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool.
Taking place of Pseudo, who is not in this episode, who is very much not in this episode.
God, that keeps happening.
I think he was filming another film, of actual film at the time.
Okay.
I did some research. So, okay. I think it's going to go high on the list, but not Trouble with Tribbles high.
Oh, see, yeah, it is a difficult one. We've kind of made a rod for our own back with that, because I think overall I'm more likely to head back to DS9 than a lot of the other shows.
Than this, yeah.
And therefore I'm more likely to see Trials and Tribble-Ations than Trouble with Tribbles. Obviously, this is not as foundational, not as iconic, 'cause it's not the trendsetter. It is the direct descendant of it. So, and with that in mind, I can totally understand it. Is it going to be is this the kind of situation where it'd be easy enough almost directly below Trouble with Tribbles? Because I'd watch this over Mirror Mirror in the case.
Yeah.
Like they will split up one day, but
it's almost inevitable.
Yeah, I'm good with that. It breaks up a streak of original series ones.
The sad thing is, it does knock Cat's Paw down from unlucky 13 to 15, but that was going to happen unless we had like a run of really bad episodes. Cat's Paw's space at number 13 on the big list was going to be an episode.
It was going to fall at some point. Excellent. So that is our new number 5. Our top 10 is very Tribble heavy at the moment. But yeah, we'll see if that streak can continue. So, finally, we have our third of the trilogy of Tribbles, or Tribble-Logy. Yeah, I'll make it work. We have Star Trek The Animated Series, Season 1, Episode 5, More Troubles, More Tribbles. This is one of the sequels that they did. Did they do this often? Because I think there are a couple on there.
There's like a episode with the trader guy Mudd. There's a episode where they go to the Shore Leave planet from the planet Shore Leave, and I think that's kind of it.
Okay.
I can't think of any more sort of explicit sequel episodes.
Okay, so this one aired on the 6th of October 1973. It was written once again by David Gerrold. Gerrold or Gerald?
I'm not sure. I mean, you were saying Cyrano instead of Cyrano, so
yeah, terrible. Okay,
yeah,
and directed by Hal Sutherland. The UK and US number 1 hits are odd ones. The UK has the Simon Park Orchestra with Eye Level, the theme from the Thames TV series Van der Valk. I don't know what that is.
Those are words you just said.
They are. Now, the theme itself is fairly generic 70s TV theme. I've no idea how it became number 1 there. Maybe it was just a quiet bit of time. and the US had share with Half-Breed, which, yeah, all about the kind of half Native American existence, I think.
Okay.
It's got a story to tell, and I'm not even gonna go there because I'm not sure how problematic any of that is. The video certainly felt it.
Okay, I'm quickly looking up Van der Valk on Wikipedia now, and it almost feels like a parody. It feels like a parody. When people make fun of the sporadic nature of British television, this kind of feels like what they're joking about, because there were 5 seasons, 32 episodes, and the original show ran from 1972 to 1992.
Wow.
I'm getting from like 1977 to through to 1991. Nothing. Then series 3 is as 1977. Season 4, 1991. This is like the community joke about a British show lasting 50 years and having like 6 episodes.
Yeah. I guess the people must have wanted that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Anyway, so yeah, that's where we are in time. Apparently, Van der Valk is all the rage, and yeah, let's recap some Star Trek animation.
And engage.
Okay, so this is a sequel now to Trouble with Tribbles. The Enterprise is back at it. They're escorting some robot ships filled with grain to Sherman's planet, which seems doomed at this point with all the poor grain deliveries they've been getting. It's all in a troubled state already, which I guess is what happens when you skip the cold open. The Klingons are already out there pursuing a small scout ship and not bothering to respond to the Enterprise when they call. Scotty tries beaming the pilot of the ship out and manages to get them in the pattern buffer just before the ship blows up. It takes a long time to decode it, though, so they're just kind of flashing a bit in the transporter room. On the Enterprise, there's a weird shrill noise. Is it a mosquito loose on the bridge? No, it's an alarm. The Klingons have a brand new weapon which looks like a floodlight and is apparently able to completely paralyze the Enterprise. It can't move, it can't fire anything. They are stuck, and Captain Koloth is back, demanding the passenger be unleashed from the pattern buffer due to him being some kind of ecological criminal. The Enterprise are resistant to do this because no one's really clarified who this is or why. So they've sent out robot grain ships to help distract the Klingons, splitting power resources and ultimately losing the beam's lock on the Enterprise. The Klingons flee because they've got to recharge a bit, and then we see who's been in the pattern buffer. It's Cyrano Jones again. He's surrounded by entirely pink tribbles now, and Kirk delivers an incredibly stilted, I think I know that man. Incredible delivery. Wonderful, no notes. Apparently, Serrano's tribbles are fine now and not an ecological disaster because they don't breed. Instead, they just grow fat. More horrifying notes on that later. He also has a weird, horrible crab spider thing he just pulls out of his pocket, and it's called a glommer, and it eats tribbles, apparently by squatting on top of them off screen. Whatever, fine. It seems gross. I didn't expect as much body horror as we get, but here we are. So yeah, the tribbles may have been spayed, but they get all over the Enterprise pretty much immediately, and this time they're growing as well. It doesn't help that one of the robot grain silo ships got damaged.
Are you sure it's one of the robot grind ships?
But yes, so there's grain on board the Enterprise, which is pretty much immediately eaten by the tribbles. The Klingons recharge and return. They attack the remaining grain silo ship, stopping it from advancing and forcing the Enterprise to ask, do we go back for it or just write it off? And they're on the side of write it off just to conserve batteries rather than have to, face the Klingons on low power. The Glommer, speaking of low power, is not big enough to eat the Tribbles, who are really massive now. And again, Sherman's planet, fucked. It's just fucked. Let's not bother. The Klingons can have this grainless world. So yeah, the Enterprise abandons the grainless ship and gets hit with the stasis field anyway. And Koloff calls Kirk up, apparently he's willing to chat now, and says, give us Serrano Jones. The Klingons are preparing to board, and the Enterprise goes for Plan B, which is Plan By Tribbles. They decide to shove the fattest Tribbles at the Klingons, and it gets to the point where Koloff's taunting is a lot less impressive when there's a big pink Tribble running around behind him. He is understandably put out by this whole situation. He explains he doesn't care about that bloody human. He wants the Glommer. It was a Tribble remover that the Klingons had because, someone beamed a whole bunch of Tribbles onto a Klingon ship, so they needed this kind of thing. Koloff doesn't understand that it's rubbish against the big ones. So the Enterprise are like, yeah, that's fine, I guess. Bones then explains the harrowing truth behind the whole Tribbles don't replicate. They don't kind of breed. They just get fat. They do breed. They do get pregnant. They are still born pregnant. But his own...
the so
alarm
close.
knows. The alarm knows this terrible truth. Okay.
Right, and engage.
Yes, the horrible truth. They do get pregnant. They just can't give birth. So this means they give birth to Tribbles who are stuck inside them, who are also pregnant, and also give birth to Tribbles who are also stuck inside them. This is horrible. If we were talking about cats, that would be horrifying. That would be RSPCA right now. But no, this is a comedy episode, apparently. So yeah, the Klingons that fight the giant Tribbles shoot them, and that kills the giant Tribble, launching hundreds, thousands of the bastards everywhere. This is horrible. They get flooded with them. And yeah, now the Klingons have tons of new Tribbles to deal with. They do at least have the Glommer, which is beamed over. So I guess it can start kind of killing all of the Tribbles before they give birth and can't unleash their offspring and grow giant again. So they're trapped in this big old cycle once more. And Kirk, speaking of cyclical events, he stands under a hatch while having a bit of a moan about this. And oh, what's that? In the vent, it's one last giant Tribble, which falls on him, evidently rips open, and spills out even more Tribbles. Enough Tribbles to bury him again. Hopefully these ones aren't all corpses. The end.
1 minute, 34 seconds.
What the fuck, Miles?
This is the worst. This is the horror version of Katamari Damacy in my mind. Just a Tribble sucking up other Tribbles into itself.
Oh God, I was watching it aghast. This was the last one I saw because I knew I only had half an hour lunch on one of the days. It was like, this will be easy. And by the end, I was just like shaking back and forth, like, what? What are the implications of all of this? Oh, horrible.
So given the notorious demands of American broadcast standards and practices, where like kids' cartoons are concerned, we can see a Tribble get eaten. That's fine.
Yeah.
But every Cobra henchman who gets shot down has a parachute.
Yes. But like that's God, I don't know if they'd hit that point in the 70s where there were any kind of standards that needed to be in place. But But yeah, I get that. Oh ho, this is fun episode. You got lots of tribbles. They're all over the place. They're just weird little pink scribbles, pretty much. But we've seen them. We've seen the live action versions of them. Imagine if those live action ones got bigger and bigger because they were all pregnant but couldn't give birth. And then more ones inside them were also pregnant and couldn't give birth. Like some horrible matryoshka that is mostly fur. Yeah. Oh god.
See, I was surprised about how many times the Klingons effectively declare war on the Federation by opening fire on a Federation ship in this episode.
Yes. Yeah, well, what about the Errand of Mercy space creature entities that were like, no, you guys are going to have peace or we will eliminate all of you. They evidently were snoozing through this one. But yeah, so I liked that this was pretty much a direct sequel to Trouble with Tribbles. I assume they've not waited, a decade and gone, wait a second. We meant to terraform Sherman's planet, didn't we? This is them having gone, look, we took the grain thing too flippantly. We didn't realize it was poisoned. We're going back home, getting some grain, and then we're coming back out. And yeah, the robot grain ships, neat idea. Like it. That was a good sound kind of plan. Only just having seen the finale of Lower Decks season 3, very mild spoiler for that, but that's got kind of drone Starfleet ships.
Yeah.
The thing. So to go from that a day later to watching this, where you've got drone grain ship kind of things, was kind of fun. That was neat. And yeah, like it was a different creature definitely to the other two. Being more of a submarines in space, oh, we've got this conflict. It also hinges around tribbles, which are just ludicrous by their nature.
This one is fun, but it doesn't. The really cheap and limited animation lets it down in all ways. Like when you're meant to have like the big exciting space battle with like the drone ships, you're like, okay, the drone ships are clearly going at 2 miles an hour. This isn't something you can't avoid. And then you can tell that they're trying to do some very kind of witty dialogue and wordplay, but for the most part, it just falls flat because there's no real kind of. I think this definitely feels like it was all recorded separately in separate booths and then just kind of mixed, put together in the final mix. So all the kind of Spock says something funny, Scotty, says the simple down version, and then beat back to Spock going, "I believe I just said that." It's just flat. Yes. It doesn't work. That said, there is some really good physical comedy, like the ever increasing size Tribble every time we cut back to Kirk's chair, leaving him just kind of standing next to a giant Tribble, like, I think I'll stand.
Yeah, God, we're back to that kind of, I guess, one of the earlier instances of callbacks with him having to lever off the little Tribbles that were on his chair. Now it's one giant one, with him having the Tribbles all fall on him. Now it's one giant one. It's it's all right. It's not anything special, and is harrowing when you think about it for too long.
The best bit of intentional comedy is when the giant Tribble is just like tribbling around behind Koloff.
Yes.
Who did you notice the animation error where he teleports into the Enterprise bridge for a second and then teleports back?
Look, sometimes you forget.
Like when he's on the view screen, like he's talking to him on the view screen, then it cuts to Kirk, then cuts back to Koloff, who is now superimposed on the bridge. Then cut back to Kirk. Koloff's back there now. Koloff's back on his ship.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's not great. Speaking of which, I guess we need to place it on.
I do have one last thing.
Go on.
I have one little bit of headcanon. You know when you have the Klingons in line to the doors where the big Tribble is hiding?
Yep.
I think Klingons only have one bathroom.
Oh no.
Because I don't think they're waiting for the Tribble. I just think they're all queuing to use the space toilet.
Well, look, it keeps them perpetually angry, and that's how the Klingons like it.
Right. So,
Yes.
big list.
Yeah. I was going to ask whether there'd be any Klingon Tribble war songs, but I realise I'm not a musical man. I've got none of that in me. I can't make one of my own. But there's got to be them, right?
Hang on. Hang on. Give me a second. We went and we fought the giant Tribble. We killed the giant Tribble. We stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and shot. And then we had some blood run for lunch.
There we go.
The Klingon Tribble fight song set to the theme from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Seems fitting.
There's not much to talk about for this one.
No.
Unfortunately. No.
No, now I've calmed down.
Now you've stopped quivering with rage with how does its organs work? How if the big Tribble is filled with the small Tribbles, how do its organs work? Where does it eat? Where does it poop?
They don't really. They've said they are mostly just reproductive organ and hair, and I assume somewhere to gestate a little Tribble, which then
just grow extra skin, like limitless amounts of it's a Tribble with stretch marks.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah. If you shave it, which don't shave a Tribble, that's going to be horrifying.
So it's going to lead to another round of ballsack or anus from our first episode.
Now there's a callback.
There's a callback.
A terrifying callback. So yeah, looking at the list, I think it's poorer than Beyond the Farthest Star, just because the antagonist isn't great, and even though the animation is as unambitious, it's still got some weird visuals and some cool things like a dead star. That's down at number 16 on our list.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the classic question of is this better or worse than Encounter at Farpoint, which is currently number 17.
It is like shorter.
It is.
It is shorter than Encounter at Farpoint. That might be the only thing going for it above Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah. And is it better than Lost and Found, the Prodigy pilot?
No.
No, I had a lot more fun with
No.
it. Like, I admit I was fairly harsh on it last time, and it is low on the list because it's got nowhere to go but up, in my opinion, really. Being not very Trekky to start off with. Or at least, you won me round a little bit. There's some Trek spirit in it, not just, Jason Mantzoukas being a Tellarite. So yeah, is it better or worse than the Captain Killy episode of Discovery? Because now we're in the low quality, and we're about to hit. If it's worse than this, there's the question of is it bad actually? Because that's where Strange New World for Enterprise comes in.
I would probably watch this more than an episode. Like, if I had a choice between an episode of the animated series and an episode of Discovery, I'm gonna watch this more.
See,
I
will say, doing a few episodes of Discovery for this on their own, there are a few flaws, certainly, and a few difficulties, but less than I thought, as far as, continuity and just watching a single episode.
Yeah.
Could be better. It could be more self-contained, and hey, we've got Strange New Worlds for that. But definitely better than I thought. But yeah, I'm willing to stick this above Despite Yourself if it's
I am
a moment and a really shit fridging.
Yep. I will go with this. This is going to be number 19.
Nice. Okay, it also pushes any reference to Ed Sheeran lower down on the list because he was both musical acts on that episode of the time that episode of Discovery aired. So, yeah, we have 24 episodes listed now. 2 more episodes and we'll be up to 30. A nice round number there.
That's random.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, I guess all that remains is for us to play you out. So as far as checking us out, we do have a Ko-fi for Casual Trek. If you want to bung us a couple of quid, it will certainly help with the get nicer microphones and subscribe to Paramount Plus Fund. Also, if you do chuck us some Starfleet credits on there, suggest an episode of Star Trek, and we will build an episode of Casual Trek around it, which is a threat and a promise. Aside from that, individually, I can be found on skyshark.itch.io for Explosion High, my comic. And if you go to the link that I'll put in the show notes, there's a sign-up link for issue 2, which is coming to Kickstarter early next year. In addition, I am also potentially found on Twitter, if it still exists at the time you're listening to it, at Charlie_EN, where I post about X-Men almost every day. There have been a couple of slips, mainly by either being on holiday or rubbernecking Elon Musk's destruction of Twitter. So much that I forgot to post it yesterday. So that's me. How about you, Miles?
I can currently be found, for the moment, at ManMiles on Twitter. We can also be found on our Twitter feed at Casual Trek Pod, which has not been as active as it should be because we're all kind of rubbernecking the Ballardian entropy of Twitter as perpetrated by Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, I spend too much time on there and have got to know some fun people on it. I just can't look away from the car crash. It's been a fascinating piece of theatre. Anyway, aside from that, which is probably going to be out of date in 2.5 weeks' time when this airs, next time, catch us for the Jeffrey Combs Appreciation Hour, because yes, he deserves it. And yes, I know we'll go over an hour.
And with that, he has been Charlie Etheridge-Nunn. I have been Miles Reid-Lobatto, and you have been our audience. As always, in this cruel, inhospitable world, do your best every day to go do a Starfleet. And have a jelly baby and cuddle a Tribble.
Goodbye. You have been listening to Casual Trek by Charlie Etheridge-Nunn and Miles Reid-Lobatto. The intro theme was by Alfred Etheridge-Nunn. Star Trek's owned by Paramount, and Casual Trek is part of the Nerd and Tie network.